Welcome to episode number 61 of the American Regularis podcast. I'm your host, JD Walter, and it has been a minute, boys and girls. Actually, it's been months. There's no huge emergency or some sort of really exciting or catastrophic reason. I've been gone since September. I had to look it up. The last time I had done a podcast was over the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It was more of just falling out of a good, healthy habit, whether that's diet or exercise or brushing your teeth. Sometimes you just go 7 months without doing it, you know. But I'm here to change that. I'm here to rectify it. And I thought it was about time to start ranting into a microphone every now and then again, for better or worse. So, if you like what you hear, you should be getting more of it soon. To start me off, I needed an impetus. I needed something to overcome the inertia of not podcasting. And I found it. I got my Ron Paul newsletter in the email box a few months ago, about the conference down in Lake Jackson, Texas, home of the great Ron Paul. And I decided it was high time I go and see the man speak again. Besides that, there were other people there. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Joe Kent, Brian McClinchy, Daniel McAdams spoke. Really great. And it kind of got it kind of helped me cut my teeth again and kind of get a little bit of that fervor back about politics. I've still been keeping up, but it was a little nice just not having to research stuff or feel like if I didn't listen to umpteen hours a week that I would have not enough knowledge to speak on it. So I kind of had this big hiatus. And while I enjoyed that, I feel like it's time to get back into it and feel like I'm producing something, regardless of its consumption, right? So, this one's going to be relatively short. It's going to be relatively informal. I just want to talk about a few things, and I thought I would start off with the Ron Paul conference. It was very good. The focus was on the war in Iran, relations with Israel. And I should preface this. Part of me was nagging. I know I don't have a large base of listeners. And those of you that do listen to this again, great. I appreciate you very much. But part of me was like, man, the timing of my haltage of podcasting kind of coincided pretty quickly with Trump's term. And I had already said I didn't vote for him basically just off the fact that I couldn't trust his foreign policy. And I believe a couple of my last episodes, I was being somewhat critical of Trump and his inability or at least his inaction in ending the war in Ukraine. And man, it has been a disaster since. Obviously, this podcast has missed out on not only the initiation of the Iran war, but we ran a gambit. The Epstein files, and then silly stuff like whatever, Byron or Brian Nome or whatever. But between the Epstein files and a war in Iran, I mean, I missed out on really what would have been two absolutely huge things. And I did not want to end my run of podcasting where it looked like I just I quit podcasting because I was trying to hold water for Trump. I was admittedly rooting for him in the election, but he has been just a disaster. About since the time I quit podcasting. I don't know if that's a coincidence, if maybe I was in his ear. I'm not sure how likely that is. These things run about 30 minutes to 45 minutes long on average. I don't think Trump has an attention span for that, but maybe he got some bullet points from someone in his cabinet. But have no fear. If you would be excited to hear me be a very stern, harsh critic of Trump, I'm expecting there is going to be a lot of that, because I was, and will always be a libertarian. And when you spend recklessly, the tariffs have not turned out well. When you hold water for Jeffrey Epstein and his evil friends, when you start wars in Iran, these things tend to run against the grain of, I would say, not only libertarianism, not only freedom, but basic ethics, morality. So I think that there will be no shortage of topics to cover. And I guess maybe that's the luckiest thing political podcasters have, because Joe Biden didn't let down on that either. We have had now quite possibly a senile and a delusional president back to back. It's just stranger than fiction, boys and girls. But let's get to that conference I was talking about. I went down to the Ron Paul conference. I'll just give you basic insights. Joe Kent spoke, very well spoken. Big, tall, handsome guy. I don't think, the hair was like really nicely positioned or whatever. He's like ex-Green Beret. Seems principled. Sure, doesn't make sense to be publicly resigning from a prestigious office if it's not for principle. But I mean, I think he's going to be running. Will he catch fire? I don't know, but I think he'd be a better option than your average politician for sure. I mean, I just said I think he has principles, so that puts him above 99% of them. At the speech, he's well spoken. He talked about, being a fan of Ron Paul's. I liked overall what he had to say. I'm not convinced that I would call him a libertarian. Maybe like a good Republican, which I know is somewhat oxymoronic at times. But I don't believe he's a non-interventionist, like maybe Ron Paul or a lot of guys like myself that are there were. But it certainly seems way more measured. I mean, I would assume I would put him towards maybe like a Tucker Carlson or Rand Paul, maybe, in where he's measured at. This is purely speculative. I didn't speak with the man. But I'm not going to sit there and say this guy's the next Ron Paul. If anyone, it's probably Massey. But I think that Joe Kent will be running. Marjorie Taylor Greene was also there. I was never a big fan of her. She was a scathing critic of Trump now, and it was very interesting to hear her talk about just how adamant Trump was about covering up the Epstein files. She, for all intents and purposes, I mean, she was the right-hand woman of Trump. No one was as big of a stan for Trump as Marjorie Taylor Greene. She wore one of those hats to the inauguration or the first State of the Union or whatever it was. And it was kind of cringy. I mean, for her to abandon that, she didn't have to. I'm going to give her flowers on that. So many people, danced with the girl that brought him, and Trump helped bring her. For her standing up for those girls and trying to get the Epstein files out, bygones be bygones, or whatever. I'm a big Ro Khanna guy for how he's trying to help with Iran. I mean, he's a socialist. I don't like a lot of his views, but with the Epstein files, him and Massey going after the Epstein files, man, I can get there and give a full-throated endorsement of Ro Khanna in the way he has championed for transparency of the Epstein files. So I can do the same for Marjorie Taylor Greene in that. So I did appreciate that. And there was another speaker named Brian McClinchy who gave a completely interesting speech on just how embedded the hooks of the Israeli government is on the U.S. foreign policy. It was really good. I can't do it justice. Maybe I can look into maybe some of his writings or something more, but it was extremely interesting to hear just how much money, just how much influence. One of the guys from the USS Liberty, a survivor, one of the last ones, was there as well. He got a standing ovation. And of course, Ron Paul came out. And what Ron Paul said, Ron Paul's in his 90s, early 90s. So he's not coming up with like brand new stuff all the time. Like he's kind of in that era, if he was a rock band, where he's touring and he's not very often, but when he does, he's playing the hits. He's not playing the new stuff. He talked about the Fed. He talked about the dangers of nihilism. He talked about government corruption, the gold standard. Like, it wasn't anything I hadn't heard Ron Paul say before, and that doesn't mean it wasn't excellent. It was. It just wasn't novel to a man who's read and listened to as much Ron Paul as me. It was just awesome to see him still doing it and still bringing people together. The speech was great, but it was the man that was more impressive. At 90, still going strong. I mean, you could tell he's 90. He's perhaps his constitution's a little less than it used to be. Maybe there's a little less bass in his voice or something like that. But I did recognize during this, he also spoke for a very long time. I didn't time it. It could have been 30 minutes. It could have been an hour. I enjoyed every minute of it. But I did have this feeling at one point. I'm going, he's 90. He's 91. Maybe, like, his faculties are all still there. Maybe he doesn't speak here or there. Maybe a word was harder to hear, but not really. I mean, I understood everything. But I just remember thinking, man, if this 90-year-old sounded anything like one of our last two presidents, I would have been so disheartened that he had slipped so far from just the strenuous ordeal of old age. Like, he is more with it and more salient, and obviously he's always been smarter than Joe Biden or Donald Trump. But at 90, his acumen, his intelligence, his grasp of the situation is incomparable to the buffoons that we've elected in these recent years. And it's somewhat sad. Ron Paul's always the optimist. That part is almost a little disheartening to go, look, Ron Paul at 90. That's not his best. He's not his best at 90 or 91. He's so good. He's still so good. If we could, it's disheartening to think of just what it is people vote for. I think it was Churchill that said something like, the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with your average voter. Just look at the voting records. Look at who these people are voting for. It's disgusting. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. I get it. If you're listening here and you're not a dyed-in-the-wool, wild-eyed libertarian like myself, you don't have to support all of his ideas. But he's intelligent, and he's moral and principled, and he's got a grasp of reality. It was refreshing to see. So, in the future, we'll get more in depth. I just kind of wanted to dip my toes back in on this episode. Plenty going on. Trump has disavowed Tucker and Megyn Kelly and whoever else. There's still a war. There's a blockade. Economic turmoil is soon to follow. Trump was just... Oh, and then as I'm driving away, taking that long trip from Houston, I get a message from a friend group. They're like, oh, they tried to shoot Trump again. So, yeah, Trump was, again, the target of an assassination attempt, this time at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Most of you are aware the guy never got to him. Shots were fired. The guy was apprehended alive. And, man, I gotta say, two things really struck me on this. One is, like, if I'm the Democrats, I can't believe how frustrated I'd be with these guys. The midterms, Trump's polling worse than George W. Bush after 2 disastrous wars and however many flubs. Trump's polling numbers are abysmal. And the left just can't get out of their way with, they just can't help but try to kill people. Like, this leftist violence is a problem. And not only is it a problem just on, like, the grandiose, like, world stage, like, we look, take a wide-scoped, wide-angle view of it, like, political violence leads to more political violence. We don't want to have some sort of American version of the Troubles or some sort of sectarian violence. Like, we don't want that, obviously. But if you're the left, you don't want it because it's like a football game where you're up 2 scores. And at that point, it's like, all right, we're going to start handing the ball off, right? Run and prevent defense, which I do hate because it seems to not work. But it's like, let's not do anything stupid that gives the game away. Let's kind of play it safe. We're going to kind of stay in the pocket. Oh, shit. Oh, we tried to assassinate someone again. Like, get out of your own way on that. The second thing that really stood out to me is I went to work this week. Not one person brought it up to me. Now, to be fair, I don't talk politics a lot at my work. But when the President of the United States has an assassination attempt on him, I felt like that was usually like water cooler talk. That usually got brought up. It certainly got brought up at Butler. The Kirk assassination got brought up, but this political violence has become routine enough, and I'm not saying it's extremely common, but it's become routine enough that there's video of a guy running in with a gun, sprinting full out past Secret Service, trying to kill the president, and no one brings it up. I don't like that. I'm fine with not talking politics with my coworkers. They particularly probably hate my politics. But it seems like that it should move the needle a little bit more in everyday life when something that big happens. It was kind of odd. And the longer I let it go on, the weirder it seemed that no one was talking about it. I thought that was strange. Okay, I do want to get a little bit of brevity in here. I like to try to have fun on this podcast as best as I can remember. I have 2 clips for you from the great Ilhan Omar, who really pulled out a couple of bangers this week to make just this lighthearted stuff. First one is her speaking, and I'm just going to let her do the talking for us, and we'll go from there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just relax and enjoy this. not as good as Hank Johnson thinking Guam was going to tip over. But if you like that, you'll like this. So here's Ilhan Omar talking about laws pertaining to foreigners.
The Alien Enemies Act was invoked. It was used to detain and deport German, Japanese, Italian immigrants during World War XI. Oh, II, sorry. One of the most shameful chapters of American history.
Indeed, one of the most shameful chapters of American history was World War XI, or II. So, I get it. I guess anyone can make a gaffe reading it. But, I'm sorry. We have just clowns everywhere in our government. So if they get flummoxed by Roman numerals, then I think we could expect better. And then, if their brain can't compute World War with 1 or 2, even if you don't know Roman numerals, those are your only two options. If you have any grasp of history at all, any vague awareness of the 20th century, there's only 2 world wars. So, okay, she probably does know that, but she doesn't have it grasped enough. The Roman numerals still trip her up. And I'm sorry, this isn't 50. This isn't 100. This isn't 1,000. There's no LCs or M's. This is the number 2 in Roman numerals. I don't speak Spanish. I can count to 10 in Spanish. I don't write particularly well in Roman numerals. I can write to 10 in them. I could certainly read them. If this is the best and brightest, it's not, but it's very entertaining. I'm sure if she had wrote it herself instead of having someone else write it because she was busy doing Lord knows what, maybe it wouldn't have tripped her up, but that's the way it operates. And if you thought the fun times with Ilhan Omar was done there, you would be wrong. She had recently corrected an accounting error. Originally, it indicated that her wealth went up to between $6 million and $30 million, which is a pretty broad number. Somewhere between $6 and $30 million is what she's worth. Then that didn't sit right, and so they corrected it. And the corrected filings show her and her husband's joint assets, that's a whole nother thing, which actually ranged between $18,000 and $95,000. So, I'm not an easy person to please here. I don't like Congress people having huge amounts of money. They don't have the salary to have $30 million. That's wild. I also feel like if they only have $18,000, that's pretty terrible as well. You don't want your congressman to be that poor. Let's hear what she had to say with it on Charlemagne the God, though.
Wealth tied to your husband's companies. You understand why that raises questions for people watching from that outside.
Yeah, but that's again one of the it's their saying, right? There is no wealth increase. If you look at my husband's income, it's almost non-existent. He's helped make sure our children are going to college and our young one is taken care of. There is no wealth. There are ranges to businesses that he was invested in. I'm pretty sure. I don't even know what.
Well, they say. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. They said you reported a net worth between $6 million and $30 million, and they said your 2023 disclosure was roughly $40,000, between $40,000 and $250,000.
Yeah, but they're not net worths. They're the asset things for the companies, and so I don't know what percentage of it my husband actually has investment in. That's not, you know what I mean? It's not a full picture of the numbers.
It's an asset thingy. No, they what did they say? They said it was an accounting error. if your accounting error goes from 30 million to 18,000 or 40,000, or even like they said at the high end 250,000, I mean, you just can't carry a 2 that far. You can't do that. That's more than an account. Only a Somali accountant with a degree from the Luring Center could make a rounding error that bad. That is the only plausible way that I believe that that was an accountant error, is if that was a graduate of the Milwaukee Luring Center or wherever that place was where it took place. Absolutely insane. Now, you might have noticed this, but she started to get kind of highfalutin. She kind of got into some real complex terminology in terms of finances, like when she called them the asset thingies. That's because Ilhan Omar, who might be worth $18,000, might be worth $30 million, just hard to say, Somali accountant rounding error, she is on the House Budget Committee. That's when the Larry David music would start to cue. If the production of this podcast was produced by someone better than me. Absolutely, what a clown world government we live in. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the Ilhan Omar stuff. I have no doubt Trump will provide us with entertainment and stress and anxiety and anger in the future. So if you like all of that stuff, stay tuned. Thank you for listening to this one, and we'll catch you soon. It won't be 7 months this time or whatever. I'm using instinct math on that. I might be no better than that Somali accountant. Peace.